All right, this is working.
All right, I'll start dialing up here.
Welcome to WebEx. Enter your access code or meeting number followed by pound. If you are the meeting host, enter your PIN followed by a pound. If
Hello.
Hello, we're getting on the line here.
Alrighty.
Everybody ready to roll? All right, well, good afternoon. We will call the Selectmen's meeting of November the 16th to order. The first item of business on the agenda is to hear from Michael Fogliano, who is the chairman of the Affordable Housing Exploratory Committee. And Michael, are you on the line by chance?
I am, Tim. Can you hear me okay?
Very well, thank you, very well. So the committee has been working rather diligently, and we have before us a draft ordinance, which we're going to hear about from Michael, but this is something that once we review and show to learned counsel and so forth, it might require a town meeting, or would require a town meeting for adoption and implementation. So, Mike, we'll just turn it over to you if that's all right.
Do we have copies of this, Tim?
And
Do we have copies of that?
say again?
Do we have copies of the draft?
I put it in the boxes now. You want to look at
It
it?
wasn't in my box. This is
I got mine.
oh, this, yeah, this is it.
Okay. Good. All right. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Tim, and thank you, Mary Jo and Chris, for having me again today. I'll just do a quick overview of what we have. First, some context. This is a first and rough draft. It's modeled significantly on the Open Space Commission ordinance in terms of the structure of the ordinance, the order of the information in it, and also took cues from that on how the commission would function as primarily a planning and advisory commission working through the Board of Selectmen and working in collaboration with the other boards and commissions and departments and functions that touch on affordable housing. So that was the overall template for this draft. The content draws again on the Open Space Commission. It draws on the findings from the Affordable Housing Exploratory Committee that were presented to you in our interim report back in October. It draws some on the Town of Lyme Affordable Housing Commission ordinance, which was set up a bit differently. That was actually set up as a statutory development partner under Connecticut General Statutes 8-336F, which we may or may not want to do. I'll get into that a little bit more. This is written to allow that to potentially happen in the future if we deem that to be something that we want to do, but it doesn't prescribe it. So it's tried to be open in that regard. It also draws some on the town of Salisbury in the northwest corner of the state, who have been a real leader in this area. They actually adopted, they had a committee and a plan and a commission set up about 10 years ago. And they had a tremendous amount of material online that was very helpful. So that's a bit of the backdrop on the origin of this. I can just walk you through it briefly. I mean, the establishment is essentially a lift from the Open Space Commission. There is a section in there that states the purpose of the commission explicitly that is not in the Open Space Commission ordinance. Actually, one more general note. I think there's probably extra material in this once it's close enough to have the town attorney or his folks look at this. I expect it may be able to be boiled down a little bit, but right now it errs on the side of including all of the information that might want to be included in the final version. So there's a statement of purpose there that sets out the commission as a planning and advisory body and as a center of expertise, working through the board in coordination with the other entities in town. The membership, again, is pretty much a lift from the Open Space Commission. There's some flexibility in there on the number of members, and that gets to this idea of being able to become a statutory 8-336F development partner, which has some benefits from the state in terms of priority and potentially some funding, but it also has some strings attached. So I think that needs to be thought through a bit more before we jump into it. But in any case, part of becoming that development partner requires additional members. So it leaves some flexibility in terms of the membership. I don't know if the lawyers are going to be okay with that when the time comes, but that's how it's written for the time being. As well as the alternates serving 3-year staggered terms and appointed by the board. So these are appointed. The way it's set out now is that the membership is appointed, not elected. The qualifications and the vacancies are a straight copy from the Open Space Commission ordinance. And then the powers and duties are essentially a list. Was there a question?
No, not yet.
Okay, thank you. The powers and duties are essentially the list that was put out by the Affordable Housing Exploratory Committee, maintaining an understanding of the needs for affordable housing in O-Line, the related statutory and regulatory requirements, public policy and practices, and a general duty to develop approaches to meet those needs, a specific duty to comply with General Statutes 830J, which is the 5-year plan that will be due in July of 2022, and then updated every 5 years after that. Also coordinating the annual review of housing data in prep for what the Department of Housing publication of the Affordable Housing Appeals List. That's basically keeping tabs on the status of affordable housing in town and the underlying data to support that. A general duty to work with the planning, zoning, economic development, open space commissions, and other town functions on planning and other matters related to affordable housing. E is something that was picked up from the Open Space Commission, and that's an advisory role to the land use boards and commissions and departments on applications that include affordable housing provisions as part of the approval process. So that would essentially set out an advisory role to planning or zoning if an 830G application comes before them. F is making recommendations on housing policies and practices to meet the needs for affordable housing in town, and that would include recommending changes to zoning regulations and ordinances. Again, I think that's consistent with open space. G is maintaining a list of opportunities. That was part of the initial charge for the committee, and that would be something carried forward. H I and J are essentially vigilance functions, monitoring legislation, regulations, public policy, grants, programs, partnerships, events, practices, and trends. So that's basically H, I, and J, in a nutshell, are keeping a finger on the pulse of how affordable housing is being approached from legislative, statutory, financing, and from the practice standpoint. K picks up on something that's been discussed in the committee, which is having a specific role for public communication, engagement, communication, education for the residents of Old Lyme. As we've discovered on the committee, it's a very active area, and every time we learn something, we learn there's 10 more things we need to learn. So I think education and communication will be an important role for the commission. Along those lines, L sets up the commission as a point of contact for interested parties, advocacy groups, not-for-profits, developers on affordable housing. M is a role to represent Old Lyme in regional forums and collaborations. And at the time this was drafted, we didn't know this was going to happen, but since then, actually, we found out that the River Council of Governments is actually looking at setting up a regional forum to develop a regional affordable housing plan. And then the last is just the general disclaimer for additional duties at the discretion of the board. So that's pretty much it in terms of the first draft. As I mentioned, I think it does need to be looked at by professional eyes from the town attorney to make sure that it's both fit for purpose in terms of the intent for the commission, that the ordinance actually matches the intent, and that it's all in bounds in terms of the language. But I'll hold there and happy to take comments or questions, any feedback you have.
Mike, concerning the number of people, your committee is it's a pretty good-sized committee. Do you think that having more people, you get more diversity in opinions and so forth than a smaller group? Do you have any feel whether the advisory or the exploratory committee is a good size or maybe a little large? What do you think?
I think you're right on point, Tim, in terms of the additional people provide a lot of additional insight, so it's good. I think one thing, if there's a standing commission, is that on the exploratory committee right now, we have folks from zoning and planning on it, and Harold's been great to have with us because we have a direct link as we're going through this exploratory phase. As the commission matures and becomes part of the overall palette of commissions in town, then we'll have those links to planning and zoning and the other town functions. So there may be an opportunity to shrink it back a little bit, but to your point, it certainly is. It doesn't detract by having folks with planning, zoning, and some of the other functions on there. Mm-hmm. But I could envision not having folks from planning and zoning potentially being on the commission, but having that relationship between the commissions to make sure the information flows and the expertise is tapped.
Right. Sometimes alternates' terms are shorter than the members' terms, but we could get into that too. And letter B, the 5-year requirement, that I'm glad you mentioned that, because I recall that was something that needs to be, might even be spelled out, so it's pretty clear that that's a state requirement, if you will.
I got that note, Tim.
Anyone else want to?
Mike, thank you very much, and thank the Exploratory Committee for working so hard on this. I mean, you guys put this together very quickly, and I know we're, a bit under the gun if we wanted to get this approved in January, as you mentioned to us when you visited us, so really appreciate the follow-through and the research. Questions, though, this is the first time I'm looking at it. I just received it, but I wanted to ask, did your committee talk about the pros and cons of being appointed versus being elected?
No, we did not discuss it in the committee. And just to be clear on the origin of this, Mary Jo, I had talked to Tim and got the good guidance to use the Open Space Commission as a template, and also talked to the town attorney and got some tips on where to look for outside research. But other than the duties, we have not discussed the parts before that in the committee.
Okay. How about in Simsbury? Are they all appointed? Do you know?
I don't know about Simsbury in particular, but I'd be happy to look that up, Mary Jo.
Yeah, I'm just curious if there might not be a part of the discussion going forward is whether we look at that, and also whether we look at some of our commissions are elected regular members and appointed alternates. So it'd be good to get some legal advice on that aspect of things. Right now, because of your really great makeup of your committee, is some of the work that you're doing now, how is it being shared with, or has it been shared with the other commissions that you mentioned too, like planning, zoning, economic development, and open space?
The latter three, planning, zoning, and open space, we actually have folks on the committee from each of those. I have been in touch with economic development. We've referred to their report, but we haven't done anything formal yet. I'm shifting gears now to the committee, but as our report evolves to a stable draft, I think there's going to be a need to actually reach out to those entities and make sure that we're all in sync. But for now, at least, we have planning, we have zoning, and we have open space right on the committee with us.
Okay. Do you see value in having a representation from this commission on any potential building committee for potential affordable housing projects?
Yeah, to the extent that hopefully the expertise that's gained by such a commission would be useful for those. So I would see that as something that would probably be likely that you'd want to do.
Yeah.
If not in a formal seat on such a team, at least with a dotted line with some advisory.
Right. Yeah, it would seem to make sense to me too.
You could almost consider an ex officio type thing if it would be awkward to have a zoning commissioner or some of these other board and commission folks, if they didn't have the vote, they could at least come and participate from time to time.
Definitely. So I can definitely say that having folks from these other boards and commissions on the Affordable Housing Committee, as we're cutting our teeth on this area, was really valuable. On an ongoing basis, and I hadn't really thought about the voting aspect of it, but that could be useful as well. At the very least, though, so there's no doubt that there would need to be close coordination and open communication among all of those, among planning, among zoning, open space, economic development, land use.
And now the river cog.
At a regional level, right?
Yeah.
Which would bring in other towns as well.
Right. That's all I have right now.
Okay, well, this is an excellent start. We thank you and the committee for the draft, and what we can do would be to forward it to the town attorney for recommendations and keep moving this along. In the old days, we used to have actual town meetings, the annual town meeting in January, where such a thing could be considered. So that may not happen this year, but we could still keep progressing with this so that your timeline is met and we have other ways to enact something like this.
Very good. And if you like, Tim, I will add that note to the powers and duties item B to be explicit about the 5-year update cycle. And I can check on that Simsbury question you had, Mary Jo.
Thank you, Michael.
Great.
Tim, if you're going to be sending this to the attorney, will you include our top questions that we asked today? Send those to him too? Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll have some good. All right, so well, we thank you, and unless there's anything else, we can have Michael go on about his day.
Very good.
Thank you.
We have a committee meeting coming up in an hour, so that's what the rest of the day is going to look like.
Very good. Thanks.
Thank you all.
Okay.
All participants have been muted.
All right. The next item on the agenda is to review the minutes of October the 19th. We may have a motion and we can discuss the minutes. Okay. Mr. Kerr. Any comments or questions?
No.
All right, then we may vote. All in favor of approving the minutes of the 19th, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. No communications that I had. Under appointments, we have a request for Stephen Calcagni to be a member on the Open Space Committee as an alternate, and the chairman have urged us to appoint him. So he resides on Library Lane, and his write-up indicates he's retired from running a real estate brokerage specializing in representing new home builders. I've spent my time evaluating land and believe I have unique skills and possess a determined value. I intend to use this expertise to help the town acquire and enhance its real estate holdings. So that is the suggestion with the endorsement of the commission.
Motion to appoint?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. I was told by Michelle Noren that the terms for our Gateway Commission representatives should end in 2022, July of 2022. Let me make sure here, okay. Let's see, that seems to be written there incorrectly. I think it's I think we have 2023, and it should be 2022. I should have brought the bigger
Motion
list.
to correct the terms of the Connecticut River Gateway Commission membership. Suzanne Thompson, regular member, to term ending July 22, and Greg Fatoma, alternate member,
Yeah.
term ending July 22.
They're of the same year, which I thought was a little surprising. You'd think they'd be in alternate years, but they're apparently in the, I think we had them for 2023. So this would just be a correction on the date.
I'll second that, Joe.
So we have, Mary Jo, you made the motion? Mm-hmm. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. The next item is the COVID reporting. I think we are aware that for quite a while now, the Department of Health numbers in the newspaper were not the same as the Ledgelight statistics. We tried to find out why that discrepancy existed, and it was not just by a factor of 1 or 2 cases, it was more significant. Director Steve Mansfield really could not explain the difference. They do their reporting and work, and so DPH's numbers were greater, and they're so consumed with doing the day-to-day work on the current cases and contact tracing and all that, that he really couldn't devote the time. So on one of these governor conference calls, I brought it up to the Commissioner of Health and said that there was probably a 9 or a 10 number difference between the 2 different reportings. And so what Steve decided to do was to just adopt what the Department of Health is reporting. As we know, in the most recent reporting on November 13th, we have Old Lyme showing a caseload of 53. And before the switch, it was probably in the mid to upper 30s. And of course, since that time, there's been some additions as well. I would still like to see if we could get from the Department of Health a list of all the cases, because we've been reporting them on a specific date, the gender and the age, and that information is no longer available on the reporting anyway. So I think that would be important, because the emergency services people need to know where the most recent cases have been diagnosed, because if they're called to a property and there's someone or more than one with COVID, they need to be extra careful. And so that's why we want to have complete information and up to date. And for the emergency service people, that would include addresses, so if they get a call to go to a property, they're forewarned. So I will try to get this reconciled. Now, the report that came out is certainly has a lot of information. It talks about new cases in the last 2 weeks, and that gives you data to be able to do some of the percentages and so forth. It also talks about how many of our residents have received tests within the last 2 weeks from one source or another. So it's a more complete information, but it would be really, I think, terrific if we could have the complete history here so that we know where we stand. So I think if people saw it in the 30s, now they see it in the 50s, they say, oh my gosh, there's been a boatload of cases, new cases. But I think part of the reason is that by shifting from the Ledge Light numbers to Department of Health, there's probably let's say 9 or so increase right there, and then new activity on top of that. So we'll try to get to the bottom of it, but clearly there is an increase going on in Old Lyme and all around us. So we need to that's what we need to focus on for sure, and then try to reconcile the information.
Tim, do you want to correct your agenda? You said there were 32 positive cases, including 2 deaths, rather. That was the information we had on our agenda from October 19th.
Yeah, I'm having trouble with this microphone thing again.
Your agenda that you put out to the public is
I'm afraid that was a typo. I think it was on the prior agenda when I was going through. I didn't correct that to any of the new numbers, so that's just a mistake, that number on there.
And that's why I emailed you on Friday, because we have to be, just as you're saying we want accurate data, we have to be accurate in what we present. So you're saying that we are now at, I think last I saw from the line, we were at 58.
Yeah, well, it's of course every day it's subject to change, but I think generally, I think the Lyme line was reporting as of the Friday. Mm-hmm. This last report from Ledge Light was a Friday, so probably from week to week we can stick to the Friday information, and then if we see a particular spike, we'll try to communicate that in our news release and so forth. But
yeah, like the information I shared with you last Thursday, you can go on the Department of Health.
Right.
It's very difficult, and time consuming, but you can print out practically a day-by-day case review of how the cases have increased or decreased. As you said, sex and age aren't depicted, but it's very clear that the whole region, let alone the whole state and country, but our whole region has seen an increase significantly starting at the end of October. And I just really urge people, especially going into the holiday season and the cold weather, to do what's required to keep us all safe, and wear your mask, wash your hands, and do keep your distance between people. The numbers are not good, and it's very, very concerning. The science is coming and getting there, but we're not there. It's not going to be there for us to have that vaccine or therapeutics widely available for some time. So it's really important. The data shows, and we did talk about this, that it's not the cases coming from schools. It's actually coming from primarily community spread. And we just have to close our bubbles up, not close our economy, but close our bubbles, keep our relationships tight, practice good hygiene, and wear those masks. And then I think we can turn this around. We're in this color-coded system now that we've gone to the DPH of yellow, orange, and red. And it depends based on the numbers over a 2 period. So we have no change next week, for example. They put the formula includes the cases from this week and next week. cognizant of our public health measures to get through this.
And I think there is a website where you can find where testing is being offered. I think that it's not, you can't just walk in and get tested right away. There might be a wait, so that may be a bottleneck. But in this report, it talks about the number of tests, and Lyme residents, 563, had tests within the prior 2 weeks. So obviously people are getting tests, and that gives you a little peace of mind that you know for sure whether, if you feel somewhat sick or something, you can get tested. But I guess there have been places where the waits have been a bit long, so I think that's still a bit of an Achilles heel, but testing is available. And I think it's also at no cost, so that's helpful.
Yeah, Old Saybrook has been running it daily at Saybrook Point in the mornings. There was a kind of a pop-up testing opportunity at Rocky Neck over the weekend, and then they have lanes for the first responders, so those folks can get in quickly. They usually have an option for people to walk up to, but the drive-through, I attended one a couple of weeks ago, and it went very, very well. I was real impressed. This was through the Community Healthcare Corporation, and it was run, I guess, through the contract that Ledgelight has with the state, and went very, very well. It was very professional, and I got my results in 2 days.
Good. All right, turning to project updates, the Soundview sidewalk. Mary Jo, do you want to?
Sure, thank you. The committee met yesterday and updated folks on where we're at. We're very close to being ready to send our package, the final plans, to the DOT for approval. We are waiting on the final easement that is needed at the Easy Mart on Shore Road and Hartford Avenue to be completed, and really that'll be about the last piece to go into the documentation. And then it goes to the DOT. Our understanding is primarily a regulatory sort of a checkbox function as opposed to a full, dot your I, cross your T type review, which is what we had with our federal project in Lower Hartford Avenue. And once we get approval, we may have to make some corrections, but once we get our final approval, then we can go out to bid. So I'm hoping that can happen in December and go under contract in January so that we can have our spring start. That's the summary where we're at. The other thing we're trying to do is talk to the homeowners on Hartford Avenue that abut the project. Because of the sidewalk project, many of the driveway aprons need to be adjusted so there isn't a drop off between the sidewalk and their driveway. In some cases, upper Hartford Avenue, it's practically nothing, but closer to Bocce Lane, the grade change is more significant. So we provided temporary rights agreements to each of these people. It just allows our contractor to go onto their property to do this work during construction. That's why it's temporary. So we've only gotten, I guess today I heard we have 6 back. So we have a few more to go here, and the committee is calling people to remind them that these were sent out and that we'd like them back within a week. And hopefully we can get that done too before we submit to the DOT. Although it's not a requirement, we think it makes sense to have those in certainly before we go to bed.
Very good, thank you. The Haynes Park restroom building, the footings have been completed and the framing and roof have been put on the building. They're starting to begin work on the inside. I think they were putting the sidewalks in today, so that seems to be progressing quite well. Phil Parkak is monitoring that situation, taking pictures and so forth, and he reports that things are working very nicely. So they're still shooting for an end of the year completion date. The next item is the Grassy Hill Road Bridge. While we were submitting an application to extend the timeline on doing the project because the Corps of Engineer permit reportedly was going to take months to obtain, that would knock it out of the 2021 season to be 2022. When I reviewed the submittal by our engineer, I noticed that there was a significant escalation in the cost between the preliminary cost estimate and then another cost based on the actual more specific engineering work, and it went from $691,676 to $1,226,639, which is a 77% increase. I called the engineer and I said, "Holy Christmas, that's quite an increase." I don't know just why it was so radical. So I said, well, if it's a 50% grant, the old Lime share would go from $346,000 approximately to $613, and that's over $250,000. So I said, is there a way to rethink this project? Because these numbers are akin to the cost of the Mile Creek Bridge, which is a much larger situation. So I think it would be worthwhile. I'm not sure that the state, quote, ordered the town to replace this, or whether it would be a good opportunity to repair it before it got any worse. So we're going to be doing a little analysis on what the options are. Certainly one of the issues is that the utility lines going by Grassy Hill Road, there's a phone pole right out in front of where the road joins Route 1. It's just a quirk, but it's a Y-shaped thing, and in the middle of the Y is the phone pole. And it has all kinds of utilities on it. So that was to be moved to remove that out of the intersection and make the intersection more of a 90-degree turn. So I think if we could figure out how to not replace it perhaps, but do something less, if it's worthy of consideration, I think we owe it to ourselves to think about it. But given that incredible increase, that would require the state to step up, which apparently the state, early word was that the state would be willing to, notwithstanding the increase, and the town would also have to step up. So we're exploring what can be done, and no clear direction yet, but we'll keep everyone posted. But it will not be done this coming summer.
Tim, based on, and I don't think Chris and I ever saw like a breakout of the budget first. Do you recall getting that, Chris?
Well, when this initially happened? No, I don't recall.
So is there anything in the file that shows, based on this new engineering budget, what part of the budget estimate?
It was the construction part of the budget, the engineering and some of the littler stuff didn't change, but the cost of construction estimate was the major thing, and it's a major, it's the key ingredient for the whole bridge.
So the utility part of it, moving that pole, was separate?
Well, actually, there's a little silver lining in that one. The engineer, in talking with the Eversource people, and of course, Eversource is not the only utility. There are cable people and so forth. But the word was that the Eversource would not be charging for the change of the utility poles, which could be significant. So with Mile Creek, we had a minor charge there because we simply had to move the wires, not move poles and make wholesale changes. But this, seemingly the utility part, we might not have a cost associated with that. Now, I don't know whether each and every utility would feel the same way. So that was not a contributing factor. It's just the construction.
So it's more that this is a different type of bridge. I mean, this is, as I recall, it's like this old, I forget what it was called, embankment. And someone hit it a couple of years ago, and it was, so maintenance had to be done.
Well, that was only a abutment.
The abutment.
I believe it's concrete pipe, 2 or 3 concrete pipes just under.
A couple of pipes underneath.
Nothing elaborate.
But isn't this part of the whole?
Well, yeah, part of that. And the sides were basically like a mason stone wall.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess I think where I was questioning is, Tim was asking me if this is more than Mile Creek, but the actual structure is quite different.
I think the bridge would have been removed and put a new structure in. I did not hear anything from the engineer that said the whole scope of the project's being changed to simply repairing to replacing, something like that. I mean, I could buy 10 or 15%, but this magnitude, one would think, if it's pretty much the same scope of work. So we'll get into more detail, but that was an astonishing figure to see.
How long is the grant good for?
How long would the thing be okay, the 50%?
Yeah.
That's what the time extension we were going through. Mm-hmm. Now, it's not because of the engineer or because of the town, it's because the Corps of Engineer itself. But at this design number, the cost estimate for the construction, that was sort of a contemporaneous piece of information along with the extension, because they have 2 columns, the original and the proposed, and they were very, very different. So I haven't had time to really ask the engineer what elements of the construction caused this to go up so much.
Right. So do we have a time limit now on the extension of when the grant has to be used by?
The DOT representative, because we did fill out some paperwork, and so he said the extension should be a fine and the higher amount should be okay, which I'm sort of surprised, because you'd think they would have all their numbers scheduled for the program, and that if somebody went up a great deal like this, that they'd say, whoa. So more to come, but either we proceed with the original plan and it would be an extra year and hope that it doesn't go up anymore, or we figure out, because I think Macnick was hired to do a fair bit of repair to the bridge after somebody hit it, I think.
Yeah, that was last year.
So we could get a sense of what was done, how much was the debt cost and so forth, and is the thing sound, and what we're doing is it's not risk of failure kind of thing. It's to get it up to a bigger, better bridge. But so at this point, we don't have enough of the answers. But suffice it to say that if it might be a suggestion if we can make the whole thing serviceable, because what they did was to do some turning radius of different size vehicles. And I think if a trailer truck turned in there, even with the new reconfiguration of where it joins Route 1, it would go over the line into the opposing lane. But let's face it, it's a 2-lane country road. So, if somebody's approaching Route 1 and a truck's turning in, they'll stop, they'll back up to do whatever they have to do. It's not like it's joining I-95 or something. So anyway, we don't have a clear path just yet, but
I understand we don't have a clear path. I'm still trying to figure out. I remember towards the end of last year, Bonnie informed us that there was an increase, and that her preliminary information, like you just said, was that the state would increase their 50% too. But if we are planning to, considering just remedying the situation on our own, then we would be returning the grant? I mean, because with the grant, obviously, as we've seen, there are certain things we have to do, and it may require us to do some things, like make the bridge more accessible to a semi-trailer to use that could get that money, to access that money.
Well, if we went with the revised plan, it'd be over, the town investment would be $613,000 instead of $346. So, planning for a couple of years, you'd have to stoke up that money and make it available. Mm-hmm. If it's not a requirement to replace the bridge, I think we owe it to ourselves to explore what can be done short of embarking on this. Now, we have spent money on engineering, mm-hmm. and I expect that if you don't proceed with replacing the bridge the way it was proposed, the state might say, well, we're not funding anything. I don't know. So, if we invested $90,000 to $100,000 in engineering, which would be logically 50-50, I don't know if they'd say, well, we'll pay half of it and see you later. I just don't know. But these are pretty scary numbers, and with these budget times, it's not a good surprise. So we will find out. Turning to some good news, the Ferry Road grant that we applied for, which is called STEEP Grant, Small Town Economic Assistance Program, was approved by the DOT. So we are eligible for a grant of $126,000 on a project costing $150,000 estimated, and the town would therefore be required to pay $24,000. The difference between the project that was submitted to this DOT is that there are a number of drainage improvements on Ferry Road that would be done in addition to just replacing a sidewalk. The drainage amounts to $32,000, and then there'd be also some construction administration, which was not part of the original plan. So we are fairly well along this. The engineering firm, we don't have detailed documents, but they've been working on this for a bit. And it would go, I think it starts probably maybe 150 feet away from Church Corner, and that, because of the historic district, it's 300 feet. We had to go to the historic district and talk to them about it, but it's a small amount of the project is within the historic district. And then it goes on along Ferry Road, past Lieutenant River Lane, and down to that area where the fire dock is, or the fire well. I think the sidewalk after that up to 156 is fairly recent, and that's not part of the project. So that was the original proposal, and then so this, one of the things that we're working with the tree commission and so forth, a lot of people might know that when you're walking along Ferry Road on the sidewalk, I think it's a 2-3 foot sidewalk. It's very narrow, and it goes up over the tree roots. It's just all heaved up because the roots over the years have grown bigger and so forth. So I know there's a very sincere effort to not damage the trees, so there'll be a tree warden and a commission will have a look-see to evaluate the trees, because I imagine the roots extend into people's property. I know when we did the Lime Street, right up near Youth Service Bureau, there was a little cherry tree put in there, and we had the sidewalk deviate around the base of the tree and didn't bother the tree. This is a little different. So there might be ways to leave the tree in place and not have concrete or destroy the roots, because that would be very bad for the tree. So you want to make sure what's the condition of the tree, and is there an alternate way to make the sidewalk serviceable. So that's the one awkward thing about the existing sidewalk. So I think we could have this project happen this year, now that we have funding source, and get these plans solidified and get them out to bid and so forth.
So would we be using town standard for which is a 5-foot sidewalk?
I think it's a 4-foot one. I think what I read in some of the materials is that because of the nature of the area, it was proposed at a 4-foot versus a 5.
So does planning have to approve that, or because
I gather because the engineer indicated it's a 4-foot, and we've been talking 5 in Soundview forever, right? Yeah, so maybe because of the nature of the street, but we'll certainly confirm that. But the word I have is that it would be a 4-foot sidewalk.
And are they doing any curbing like we're doing on Hartford Avenue? Or is it just a sidewalk?
The permit?
Are we going to be doing any replacement of curbing on Ferry?
I think I don't believe there's, except for where maybe some drainage would impact things. I'm trying to visualize if there's, obviously the granite curb goes around a little bit, but I think along Ferry Road, I think it's mainly no curb, and people more or less park on the grass as much as they can. So I don't believe there's curbing intended here. Now, if there's a catch basin and they want to have the water flow more efficiently, I'm not sure, but I haven't seen any drawings or anything. This is all quite preliminary at this point.
Thank you.
So that's good news. While the voting is in the rear view mirror, I believe that I'm looking at unofficial results from about Old Lyme, and what I have is that we had registered voters of 5,933, and where's my statistics here? we, for the presidential, we had 5,408, which I think that translates to about a 91% ratio. And the Courtney election was 5,364. And I think the other offices were in the same range. So it's probably high 80s to low 90% ratio. I think things went quite well, and compliments to the registrars and the town clerk's office, as well as all, of course, the activity at the poll. I think that you were there. That went pretty well, right?
Yeah.
No fist fights?
It went very well. I was really, really pleased.
But they had the absentee ballots were processed in the room here, separate on a separate machine, and the in-person voting, of course, at the school. It was the second time we've used that this year. First one was for the primary, and I think the consensus is that thank God we used that school instead of Cross Lane, because it's 6 to 6:30. People were snaked back to the center school from the north side of the middle school. That would have been disastrous down there at Cross Lane. So just looking ahead as a Board of Selectmen, we need to come with a consensus on making that the permanent voting location for municipal and state and federal elections, the November elections. I think we could rely on other locations for other types of votes. Certainly the school referendum, the school takes care of that. And if there is a town meeting vote, we can either use the middle school auditorium. Depending on the size, you could use this room. So I don't think we would have to have all voting occur in a gymnasium and, close the schools. That would be too much of a burden, I think, for the school. But I think because the motion that was passed by the Board of Selectmen acting on behalf of the town meeting was to have that be the location for voting through the end of the year. So we need to take steps to make that a permanent for the true elections. So I'll talk to council and see. We have to go through, assuming, I think COVID executive orders go through February 9th now. I think the governor extended those. So for the annual town meeting, we will need to, we'll have to do a similar thing to what we did before if we proceed with that. But I gather there's consensus that worked out quite well from you selectmen.
It seemed to go well. I mean, doesn't it also ultimately fall on the school district allowing us?
They're very happy with it. Ian Neviser, the superintendent, said things went well. They had a professional development day, so we didn't have staff parking, so it was all available for the election. I didn't hear a whole lot of complaints that people couldn't park anywhere. I think it was, except for the opening hour or two, I think it went very smoothly thereafter. Once you got past about 8 o'clock, I think it was maybe even 7 o'clock, it was starting to tail down.
Not at 7.
Not at 7?
A little bit longer.
8? Okay. Yeah, the first 2 hours were a bit crazy.
Yeah, but then word got out and what to do and everything like that, so it seemed to.
Yeah.
Because I usually do it like 6:15, and I went by it that day. It was like, oh, I don't have time for this.
No, once you got into the middle morning and after, it was, even the evening was the evening surge or no? Pretty much by then, most everybody had voted, it seems.
Yeah, after 6, it was pretty much trickle.
Yeah. Well, with the absentee ballots, I think they were probably close to 50% of the voted. So if absentee ballots did not play a significant role in a future election, that means more people. Now, it might be a lower number of people entirely. You wouldn't get 91% perhaps. So, but I think it's still a much better spot for true elections. So, all right, well, I'll talk with the attorney and see, because I think we want to not require all voting to occur there. It would be the November elections. And
What about primaries? What about primaries?
Primaries, if they're in August, that would be probably fine because school wouldn't be in session. If they're in September, they would be in school, so we'd have to think about that. Yeah. So we'll be back with a recommendation. Okay, turning to new business, I know it was in the paper, but Caroline Doughty, who drove school buses for 48 years, bless her heart, retired, and I think that's a remarkable run. When you think of 48 years, that's quite a career, and I bet she's got some stories to tell. But it was a nice article in the paper. Were you on any of her buses?
I was a walker.
Ah.
Every day, uphill.
But a wonderful record and a nice write-up, and we wish her the very best. Her husband worked for the town in the landfill for a number of years as well. Next item is something that's really intriguing. I was connected with Sam Reed, who was president of a nonprofit, Wood Island Life Saving Station Association, and the link here is that Merv Roberts, for a time, owned a certain boat, which is a life-saving rowboat, essentially, and it was originally powered by 8 rowers, and then there was a helmsman, and way in the earlier 1900s, the people would be stationed at life-saving stations, and they would be dispatched to help mariners in trouble. This was before the Coast Guard was as organized as it is. So they would be in a station. They would have a marine railway, which was essentially a track that went from the building down into the water, and the boat would be in a cradle. They'd get into the boat with all the oars and so forth, and they'd go flying down the rail into the water and then paddle out to help people. So the connection was made that Merv, he was involved with the River School in Old Saybrook, and they had this boat as part of the River School. The boats were, actually 3 boats, were acquired from a life-saving station called Burnt Island near Booth Bay Harbor, and Ben Clarkson, who was the leader of the school, acquired these boats, and they were used at the school. I think the school, I think they did a variety of things there. They may have fabricated boats and done other things, but it was under the Baldwin Bridge there. So because Merv was involved with the school, one of the boats was named in his honor, and later on, Merv actually acquired the boat because he'd lent the school some money and they were having some trouble paying it back. So they said, well, since you love things nautical, wouldn't you, what about taking the boat? And so a deal was made. He took the boat. And then he had it for about 10 years, and it was then sold to David Smith of Essex, who still owns it. So getting back to Sam Reed, Wood Island is just off of Kittery, Maine, and it too has a life-saving station. And in, let's see, I guess it served for about 40 years, from 1908 to 48, and then the federal government, it moved on from these life-saving boats to more mechanized things, and so the life-saving station fell into disuse. In 1973, it went to the city of Kittery. They really didn't do a good job at preserving it, and so the town was making plans to demolish it because it's on a rock island off the coast of Kittery, and they just probably say it's take the attractive nuisance away. But this nonprofit was formed in 2011, and happily the station was not destroyed. So they've been working on it for about 5 years, and the selectmen have some images here of what it looks like. And it's, I guess it's over 4,000 square feet. There's an interesting tower on it, and they're going to rebuild the marine rail and so forth. So as word got back to Sam Reed in Maine that this vessel was available because Mr. Smith was ready to part with it, he came down with some experts and they looked at the boat, and after it was one of them that really researches this stuff, written books about these times, and he said, this actually is a boat just like what was at Wood Island. So there were a number of coincidences, and so the overall plan is that if the boat can be acquired by the museum, it'll be taken to Maine, it'll be shaped up. There's a railroad called the Pan American Railways that has volunteered to donate the track for the railway going into the water, and they also have volunteered to fabricate the cradle that the boat would sit on and go down into the water, because it would need train wheels and so forth. So that seems to be, that's taking shape. So the plan would be that this boat would be sent up to Maine, and so we've accepted the challenge to raise some money to pay for the cost of the boat and the transportation, and that would be, if we could, it's nothing to do with the town per se, but I think it's a very interesting story, and we all know and love Merv, and the fact that he owned it, it was named in his honor, he owned it, and one of the images shows him with a picture that he donated to the Wood Island station. And so I think it would be terrific. So I'm going to work to get this letter finalized, and I think if we could make a drum rattle in the community and see if people would like to honor Merv and make this part of history happen, it would be pretty fantastic. So just wanted to let people know that this is afoot, and it will be coming out with something it's a private endeavor. It's not a town-led thing, but it's worthy of mention since it ties back to Mervyn F. Roberts.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. All right, so I believe I will unmute the telephone. And are there members of the public who would like to make a public comment? Members of the public? Okay.
First Selectman Griswold,
Yes.
it's Sam Reed.
Oh my goodness. How are you, Sam?
I just wanted to be sure to thank you for your kind comments. We really appreciate it, and can't wait to bring that lovely boat up to Kittery, Maine.
Well, you've been amazing doing the research and making things happen, and the fact that you have saved this unique facility from ruin is, we'll get it on the tourist map for Old Lyme here and have people come have a look-see. That'd be wonderful.
Well, needless to say, we hope you all, selectmen, will come and enjoy it as we hopefully wrap this up next summer.
Yes, and it's just so many coincidences. Sam and I have been on the phone several different times, and every time he calls, he says, "You won't believe what I learned today," in a way of another link to the historical importance of this. So it's great.
Well, you summed it up very well. I know you're busy. I just wanted to congratulate you and thank you for your kind words.
My pleasure. We'll continue the cause. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else wish to do public comment? Okay.
All participants have been muted.
We can now turn to other business. So the selectmen have other things they'd like to bring up.
Just one comment, where do we stand with the police contract?
Yes.
Waiting for them to, 2 months?
No, that actually, I had a meeting with Dominic and Mr. Roach, so they have completed the tentative agreement sheet, and so it's in the hands of the attorney.
Okay.
So I've got to check with him as to what we say and when we can say it, because with contract negotiation, I think we'd be wise to wait until the actual contract is available for signature before coming out. But yeah, that's progressed.
All right, good.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I had for you was, the Board of Selectmen will have to ratify this, right?
If you get
The Board of Selectmen will have to ratify the
yeah,
contract?
I think the plan hopefully can be that he'll incorporate what we have worked on into the agreement and get it to us, and then we can review it, the whole contract, and then vote to have it signed, and I'm sure they'd do the same thing. You know, I think the only items that would be subject to change are those which we've discussed, and everything else pretty much remains the same. So,
You think we'll get this done this year?
huh?
By the end of the year, you think we'll have it done?
Oh, I expect so. I'm hoping maybe by the end of November, because it's only a few modifications. Yeah.
That's all I had.
Tim, I became aware that Nine-Town Transit is basically told they have to merge with Middletown. I had no knowledge of this, so.
If you could, I continue to have a problem with that. If you could put that mic to the right of you, and then I hear you better that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I became aware that the Nine-Town Transit So our buses are going to have to merge, or there is a plan afoot to merge with the Middletown system?
That's been discussed for a while.
I wasn't aware of it. So where is the status of that? And I'm sure you're attending the RiverCon meetings. What's the plan for that, and how will it affect our service?
As you may know, our representative, John Forbes, resigned from being the person on the Nine-Town Transit Board.
I didn't know. That's how I became aware of this. I didn't know he resigned.
Yeah. So we need to identify a new member because each town is supposed to have a representative for the town, and some towns have a selectman or the first selectman. I was called by the Sam Gold and Joe Comerford, who's the Nine-Town Transit chieftain, and they said we would really like to have somebody from Old Lyme. I volunteered to pinch hit till we could identify somebody to take it over. Ideally, it's a unique thing. I don't know how many people there are that would have knowledge of public transportation, buses in particular, but every town, well, most towns have a member, so that would be the goal, to get somebody as the new representative. There have been discussions about, because it's a three-way thing. You have the DOT, and you have Middletown, and you have Essex, which, you know, the Nine-Town Transit. And if the plan were to happen, the Middletown and Nine-Town Transit would merge, and they'd have to make some modifications. But there's a facility in Middletown as well as a facility down here, and so I think there'd be some modifications to that and so forth. And I think what Joe Comerford was saying is that small transit districts are having an increasingly difficult time staying in business because of the economy of scale. A lot of the funds are from the federal government through the state of Connecticut, and actually our transit district has done very well over the years and has been extremely well managed. And I think Middletown's record has been less stellar, but by having the two come together into one, I think most feel that that would be an important thing to have happen. So I haven't been particularly close to it, and there have been reportedly a number of meetings and executive sessions and so on and so forth, so I'm not aware of the nuts and bolts, but I think that there is a sincere desire to have these two organizations come together, because in the long run, the Nine-Town Transit District would have a hard time going it alone. So there's a lot of things that must happen, but that's on the table right now.
Well, should we find an appointee or rep pretty soon? Or?
I think if we could identify someone to take the spot, it would be good. I was involved years ago, so I can go to some meetings, anything that might happen. But I think if we could come up with someone who would have hopefully some related experience and willingness, that would be ideal. It's going to be an interesting time because obviously there are various opinions and personalities and so forth, but I think in the long run it'd be good for the 9 towns to, seems to me, the handwriting's on the wall that there should be some sort of merger. The DOT they're the ones that hand out money, so they're definitely, they definitely have a role to play here. And I don't know the personalities there, but I think the DOT would be open to such a thing. So.
Well, didn't we give them extra money last year?
Yes, we did.
In a way of an allocation?
Yeah. Either, you know, upgrade, bought newer vans, I thought.
We were gonna get a bus, potentially one of the old buses.
Oh, that's right, we're supposed to get a hand-me-down bus.
So that's what really got me, I was like, whatever happened to that? And then I found out from John.
Was
he
it-
resigned months ago.
Was it part of the appropriation, or was it a special extra bit of money?
I thought it was like a little extra,
It
or
was-
more than the normal.
Their ridership had gone up. I mean, there was, Mr. Comerford had the statistics to support it, but the ridership in our area had increased. Maybe not Lyme, but Old Lyme. So one of the possibilities was they were going to get new buses, and they were, John Forbes had come to us, gosh, maybe almost 2 years ago now, I don't know. A while ago.
2 years ago, I don't know. I remember them coming forward.
Okay, and he said they're going to be getting new buses, and they were offering these buses, the older buses, which were, you know, really very nice, for towns if they wanted one. And at that time, they were talking about maybe using them in storm situations for transporting people, like over to East Lyme. And so we were on the list to be offered one. There was no money exchanged or anything on that. But then I never heard anything more about it. Then come to find out about this merger, and so the fact that we really, other than yourself, there's no representation of the town's interest in ridership. And there's plenty of people that rely on the bus. So it surprised me and it concerned me, and as Chris said, you know, we've supported them. So I went on the website of the RiverCog. Apparently they've had a study already. At least in 2020, they've been meeting once or twice a month. So you're right, it does seem like the writing is on the wall, that this is happening. And I don't know I don't really know any details of how that's going to affect people worldwide.
Yeah.
And how we budget, you know, going into the next budget cycle either.
I'm sure they'll be submitting a budget. That used to be a fairly standard line item, so if there was a market increase, why? Because a lot of the transportation, the buses themselves, I think, come from grants, from feds, and they have some of the, I don't know if they have propane-powered buses and other things, but they have some pretty sophisticated things. You see larger buses, too. It's not just these short buses.
Well, the ones around here are pretty much the short buses.
They are, yeah.
I mean, the only thing I think about it is, okay, we merge with someone else's, the price can go up and our services go down. That's the big fear.
Yeah. Although I guess the economy of scale is probably difficult if you're a small district, because some of these are like the city of New Haven and things, you know, they're great big entities, and I'm not sure how many there are throughout the state, but Middletown itself, estuary itself, are really tiny compared to even the norm, so it's certainly not a done deal yet, but it's being discussed.
We can find a rep. I think that would help.
It would, yeah. We could.
Anybody from like the senior center?
It would be good to have somebody with, you know, some real business experience, be retired. That'd be fine. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we could put our thinking caps on and see if we could think of someone or two that,
This is the executive summary off their website, but it basically says the Nine-Town Transit operates 5 fixed routes, on-demand dial-a-ride and extra mile services, and complimentary ADA services. Middletown Area Transit operates 7 fixed routes, dial-a-ride for seniors, and complimentary ADA services. So, you know, to Chris's point, I'm concerned about the services, the ridership, and because the last we had heard, there was a significant ridership in our town, that people relying on this. As I recall, a lot of the younger people used it to get to school and to their job, and I don't have any information on how this is going to affect us, or, you know, who's standing up for us at this board.
okay. Other comments, or other business, I guess.
Yep. I don't know the outcome, but today, this afternoon, the Old Girls High School soccer team were facing off for the Shoreline Championships today against Haddon-Flingler. So they made it all the way to the championship at Shoreline. I just wanted to say, go team. I don't know the outcome of the game today, but hopeful.
Good.
The other thing I wanted to share with the selectmen, again, at our last meeting, I told you that Simsbury had passed the resolution declaring racism as a public health crisis. Since that time, about 2 weeks ago, the town of Old Saybrook has also. They basically passed the resolution that I shared with you, the first one, with just minor changes, very minor. I've listened in on CCM. They are doing a whole series on the state, looking at racial equity throughout the state, and they've had a series of webinars that you can listen to. They've been excellent, great speakers. And the effort in the next legislature is going to be to get the state also to pass this resolution. So I'm really asking the two of you to reconsider your thoughts on this. We're at least 17 towns, probably more, have passed this now. Again, it is a resolution. It requires us to look at policies and collect data. It doesn't cost us a dime to do the right thing. And rather than have it imposed on us, this is our opportunity to take the resolution and adjust it to the government functions that we have. There's nothing to be afraid of. The discussion we had is that maybe it doesn't exist here, and I think that's ridiculous. If it doesn't exist here, then we have a magic formula that we should share with everybody. I think we have to be open. We have to educate ourselves. It involves some of the other aspects of government function. I know Town Hall has to is looking into anti-bias training. There's a link to all of this, and it all just shows that we're being open, inclusive, aware, and equitable, and from all aspects of our community, but especially just checking ourselves to make sure that we're making decisions based on that it's not based on racism, and checking any of the institutional racism practices that we just used to following, as opposed to not consciously, but just that exist, particularly in a predominantly white community. It is the right thing to do, and I'm asking the both of you to reconsider signing the resolution declaring racism as a public health crisis. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Otherwise, we can call for adjournment.
I don't know what that, well, it's sort of a combination of things. When we last met, we had been visited with Gatalpas on Library Lane for a drainage issue, and you were going to reach out to our engineer to perhaps look at what could be looked at on our property to see what the problem is, and I was just wondering where we are in that.
I've been telling you about that microphone.
The library lane drainage issue.
Yeah, I saw Tom Metcalf at a meeting, and he is willing to go out, of course, and I'm waiting for him to make that call to me. I think I'll give him a call. I know he's pretty darn busy, but he and I will visit the property and get his report. So that's the next step.
Okay. I know you also had visited property down in Tallahassee, that there's some encroachment going on down there at the town landing, and that somebody had reported that are actually the signage for the town landing.
Yeah. Steve Ross and I visited the property, spoke with one of the owners, and this is a harbor management jurisdiction. The issue is that the new owners have purchased the property. It may be because for a number of months the property was vacant, that people going down there, they were, not that it needs supervision, but there was nobody living there. Couple that with the Swallow event, probably pretty close after they took title, so they have seen a lot of visitors, according to her, and even at odd times of the day, meaning after dark, which I guess if people see these landings on the internet and so forth, they might want to go have a look. It's not just local people that come. So she was concerned about having parking where it is, which has been the case for a number of years. The topography is such that the road, there isn't a lot of good options to park anywhere else than where it has been. So I think harbor management needs to look at it. We looked at a potential alternate spot, but it might only take a couple of cars. So I think, being that it's a town landing and people go there often to kayak, you just can't expect people to show up on foot or park somewhere far away, because if they have a boat, they've got to transport it. So we want to be fair, and so I think the commission needs to consider their claim and see what they want to recommend, and take it from there. They have placed large boulders to block the parking, and that really is inappropriate on town property. So they thought that was important, because they claim they felt threatened with people parking where they do, or were parking. So I think we need to have the Harbor Management Commission review this and then make a recommendation and see where we go. But it's, right now it's being analyzed. And
who took the sign?
When what?
Who took the sign down?
I don't know. I know the sign was removed, and so you could assume, but I don't know.
Well, I don't think they have a right to, put boulders on our town land.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
that Steve Ross should speak to him, or, you know, maybe even the police. You know?
Well, the attorney for the owners sent a letter, but it's pretty clear when you look at the image of where their property line is that this parcel is actually part of this looped driveway is on town property.
Yeah.
So, as to what you might say, you know, if you had said, well, we're not going to have lots of cars. Well, I don't know. It strikes me that it's a small place, and it's not like you walk down to the water and it's a beautiful dock and you can see the sunset and all that. You know, goes down into the weeds and it's mud. If you're going to launch a boat, that's one thing.
That really doesn't matter. I mean, how many cars you can get in there and where you can do it. I mean, someone's encroaching on town land and they don't have that right.
Yes. Yeah, it was a presumptive act to put the rocks there, and they obviously have their concerns, but it's not their property to do that, so.
Right. Right. So is there a cease and desist action or something to get them to move those rocks and put the sign back in the meantime?
Well, I think if we give Harbor Management, which is the entity that has jurisdiction of the landings, if they haven't seen it, the members, they should see it, and then they can come back and make a recommendation. Clearly, it's been operated as the town landing for a long time, and I remember when we were having meetings in the Catholic Church, this came up about swapping land, and there was a definite negative response, and so that didn't happen. So,
Well, maybe Steve can come next meeting. I mean, we can get Steve.
well, hopefully we can get,
Resolved by next meeting?
we could get the commission to be brought up to date if they aren't up to date, and then take some action after that.
Yeah, because I've been getting emails from residents who wanted to go down there, and that's how I became aware of this.
Yeah. No, it has a strong history of people wanting to have that be accessible, so. Yeah.
Yeah, my issue is I can understand that, I think it's good it's investigated, but in the meantime, if there's an obvious encroachment on town property, that should be alleviated. That there should be some, maybe it's the police, maybe it's zoning that orders those rocks to be removed and assigned a town property to be returned.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it would probably at this point, since they had their attorney contact us, I think the best thing would be to go back via the attorney and then.
Yeah, have the attorney say, put them back. It's not your land.
Yeah.
Within 48 hours.
Yeah. Give them a timeline.
Right.
Thank you, that's all I have.
All right, then. It is 6:45? No, 5:45. 5:45.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Thank you. Got to turn this off.
Yeah.
Is it the sign that you...
No, you gotta hit where you can barely see it. Stop.
There's
I think.
button where?
Here,